Hey guys, my name is Dr. Richie Cole. You might have seen me on Dr. Richie and the Chief, The Chopping Block, or Lives Matter, where my close friend, mentor, um, Eskimo Pastor Phil Aguilar, the Chief, we had our little show on his Facebook, our Facebook channel, and on YouTube. So I've been wanting to do this for a while. A lot of people have asked, hey, we haven't seen the chopping block. We haven't seen you guys. And Chief and I intend to continue doing it, but my wife and I own a private practice called Radical Counseling and Consultation. You can see the sign behind me. And so this is something that I've wanted to do for a while, to have a consistent weekly avenue to just express thoughts and feelings, educate people on different things, answer questions that people may have, address psychological topics, address the issue of spirituality or Christianity and stuff like that. You might have seen Lily before. Lily's my granddaughter, and she's been in a bunch of the videos that I've done. So if you ever Google Dr. Richie Cole, you'll see a bunch of different videos. And so this is a whole new thing, radical counseling and consultation. So one of the things that I want to be able to do is to field people's questions. And the way that that can happen is if you email radicalcounseling@gmail.com, you shoot whatever question you want, and then on the next episode or whatever, I can respond to that. Those questions can be about relationships, about problems you're having, about any psychological issues, spiritual issues, anything like that. Just to give you a little background on myself, I got a bachelor's from USC in 1988 in psychology. I got my first master's from Cal State LA in 1991 in psychology. I got licensed as a marriage family therapist in 1995, but I was already on my way to my doctorate, where I earned another master's and then a PhD in clinical psychology. And that was in 1999. So I had 17 years of school straight out of high school. I've been in the field 30 plus years, worked at over 30 different places, mainly dealing with issues of criminal addictive thinking and behavior. But I've worked with people who have schizophrenia. I've worked with in domestic violence with women who are abused, men who batter. I've worked with sex offenders, worked with people on all different levels of criminality in terms of probation, parole, federal supervision, pretrial, all that. And so there's a lot of different areas where I don't have any knowledge. And then there's a few areas where I do have some knowledge. And that's what I want to share. I'm 57 years old now, and I'm getting kind of into the autumn of my years, and I want to be able to give back some of the things that I've learned or ascertained throughout the years. I started my life as pretty much a hardcore atheist, following in the footsteps of my father, who came from a Jewish family but didn't believe. But he's such a righteous guy, actually one of the most Christ-like men I've ever met. He's got a lot of integrity, compassion, a very loving guy. But I kind of took the ball and ran with it. And at 11 years old, I started smoking weed. This was in the 70s. It was the area of sex, drugs, and rock and roll when that was happening in the generation. And I kind of developed a belief system, which was, if it feels good, do it. And it was a lot of fun. And even scripture says sin is fun for a season. But as time went on and I started to mature, I realized, even though I never wanted to hurt people, I'm probably not adding to people or adding to myself as much as I should or could be. So I tried to replace that belief of, if it feels good, do it, to do the right thing. And yeah, I've never had perfect adherence to that. And because of my, the marijuana was my gateway, and it opened it up to every other drug that I tried, and then became a heavy user, eventually became addicted. So I've been addicted to pretty much every drug, and in and out, been to a lot of 12-step meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. And in going to those meetings, they talked about needing a concept of a higher power, a power greater than yourself. And so that was at around age 25, I started to realize, if I'm going to get this thing called recovery and be able to progress in my life, I'm going to have to open up my mind to some sort of concept of a higher power. Eventually, I was able to use the term God, because before that, the term God was repugnant to me. I thought it was ridiculous. I thought it was like a Santa Claus, Easter Bunny type concept. And I have what they call contempt prior to investigation. I thought the Bible was BS, but I had never read the Bible. I didn't know the Bible. And so once I started to open up my mind to the concept of a higher power, it had been a very slow process, and it literally took a quarter of a century to get to the point where I accepted Christ. Jesus Christ knocked on the door of my heart one day when I was riding my motorcycle to work, actually to Broadway Treatment Center, where I worked with my buddy Chief, and the sanctification process began then. I looked back and realized he had been with me my whole life. I've been so blessed. I've made a lot of poor decisions, and his mercy and his grace has carried me so far. I've made a few good decisions, and I've gotten so much mileage out of it that it's insane. So I've always loved life. I love people, and I just want to be a blessing in this world. I want to make this place better, not worse. And one of the ways I intend to do that is through this little experience right here. So the one thing I want to share with you before I call it the first episode is one of the foundational constructs that I use in the type of therapy that I do. I developed this type of therapy called mind construction. There's nothing new under the sun, so I don't want to portray it as I pulled this out of a hat. It's just my own packaging and my own twist on CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And so basically this model right here is called the DRAT model, and it asserts that our problems are manifested in our behavior, centered in our thinking, and driven by our beliefs. DRAT is an acronym that stands for the diagram of the relationship and anatomy of thyself. DRAT stands for the diagram of the relationship and anatomy of thyself. Once again, it's a cognitive behavioral model or a psychological model. You can see the four entities here are the anatomy, and the arrows show the dynamics. So we all have behavior, thoughts, feelings, and core beliefs. There are synonyms to these terms. Behavior can also be called actions or conduct. Thoughts can also be called mental processes or cognitions. Feelings can be considered emotions, and core beliefs can be called worldview, lens, paradigm, or programming. And so in essence, our behavior has the greatest impact. Our behavior over here has the greatest impact on our material outcomes because actions have consequences. So whatever we're thinking about, whatever we feel like, that's one thing. But when we act on it, then we're going to have to deal with the outcomes or the consequences. So people who come to treatment usually come because they have problems, either behavioral problems or emotional problems. And that's where this theory asserts our problems are manifested in our behavior and or our emotions. So problems with addiction, problems with drugs, problems with violence, problems with sexual conduct, problems with stealing, criminality, a million different behavioral problems we could have. Other times people come to treatment because of emotional problems, depression, anxiety, PTSD, bipolar disorder. And so those problems will manifest themselves emotionally, right? And or in mood. Even though our problems are manifested in our behavior and our emotions, they're centered in our thinking. And that's why there's a double circle around thoughts. Thoughts are an instrument of mind. Self-talk is the way we communicate with ourselves. The thing about feelings can be intense, powerful, and painful. That's why there's the little porcupine thing around the feelings part. And feelings usually come in one of two forms, pleasant or unpleasant, but there's a million different shapes, sizes, levels of intensity, and all that kind of stuff with feelings. The good thing is that feelings do not directly cause behavior. A lot of us think they cause behavior. Oh, I acted violently because I was angry, but the reality is behavior is separate than feelings, but feelings want to make us think they're running the show. So it's very important when we're getting educated in this psychoeducation material to realize we can't let our feelings hold us hostage. Just because I feel a certain way doesn't mean I have to act that way. And that the powers in our mind, and thoughts being the instrument of mind, it's about thinking about the potential consequences of my behavior and having that factor in the decisions that I make in terms of how I'm going to act. I utilize my mind or my thoughts to identify what I'm thinking. And if I'm thinking some destructive, maladaptive, or problematic ways of thinking, I can do thought stopping and thought switching and start thinking in some more constructive and positive ways. Also, the other dynamic is where with emotions, I can use my mind or my thoughts to identify what I'm feeling. And if I'm having unpleasant thought feelings, if I'm perseverating on feelings of jealousy, anger, whatever the case is, I can regulate my emotions. So with this thing, mind construction, there's two different foundational constructs. One is which this is the DRAT cognitive behavioral model. I'll share the other one at another episode, but it's called the biopsychosocial spiritual model. There's some critical factors, but there's some primary critical factors, and there's three different levels. And the first level of mind construction is emotional regulation. So the next time I'm on here and I'm getting deeper into this is when I'll focus more on how to regulate our feelings or deal with our emotions. But just to elaborate on this further, and of course there's a little repetition because I know I speak quickly when I'm passionate about something. Our problems are manifested in our behavior and or our emotions, centered in our thinking, but driven by our core beliefs. Our core beliefs are in the basement of our mind. It's the ways we've been programmed. We're not super conscious of what those beliefs are typically, and we develop them during our formative years, but they're really the engine that drives our behavior, our thoughts, and our feelings. And for us to have significant positive behavioral, cognitive, and emotional change, it's about identifying those faulty core beliefs and changing them. And that's a very challenging, elusive, one day at a time, never-ending process, really. But that's a big part of what mind construction is. In fact, at the end, that's what mind reconstruction is. And we'll get further into that in the future. So I just wanted to turn you guys on to the DRAT cognitive behavioral model. But just remember, this is just a psychological model. It does not take into consideration biological, social, or spiritual factors. So it has to be used with another foundational construct. So that's really just, the first episode, for lack of a better word, of this thing of radical counseling and consultation. But I do want to encourage any of you that are interested, please subscribe and please email me some questions, issues, topics, concerns you have personally. I won't violate anybody's confidentiality by saying what their name is or anything like that. Just being able to address the issues or answer the questions. And you can do that by emailing radicalcounseling@gmail.com. Our assistant Odette will be fielding those comments and questions, and she's the one doing the IT and getting this running. So I'm very grateful for her. And so we can make this happen. Once again, radicalcounseling@gmail.com. Please send in questions, and at the next time that we do this, I'll be able to field those questions. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like it, don't like it, subscribe, don't subscribe, whatever. But if you're interested in this and you think that some good information can come about, some good dialogue, I really encourage you to stay plugged into this, and let's see what we can create. Thank you.